Before that night, I was nothing more than an ordinary person. I had no understanding of yin and yang, no belief in ghosts or spirits, and certainly no knowledge of the hidden rules governing life and death. To me, fate was simply a matter of chance, and the supernatural belonged to folktales meant to frighten children. I lived my life firmly rooted in the human world, unaware that a single step could carry me beyond its boundary. That night changed everything. It was well past midnight when I found myself on a desolate mountain road, a shortcut I should never have taken. The forest on both sides loomed dark and silent, swallowing moonlight beneath thick clouds. No insects chirped, no birds stirred. Even the wind seemed hesitant to move, as though the land itself was holding its breath. The air felt wrong, heavy, oppressive, unnaturally cold. It was not the chill of night, but a deeper cold that seeped into the bones. With every step forward, unease tightened around my chest as if I had wandered into a place abandoned by the living. I considered turning back, but before I could decide, a faint sound reached my ears. A weak, broken cry. At first, I assumed it was an injured animal. But when I pushed aside the tall grass, what I saw made my blood run cold. A white fox lay on the ground, its body soaked in blood. Its breathing was shallow, uneven, and its once brilliant fur was matted and torn. Above it, suspended in the air like a shadow carved from darkness, hovered a figure wielding something shaped like a crescent blade. A scythe. The presence radiated a killing intent so pure and cold that my legs nearly gave out. I did not know whether it was the Grim Reaper, a ghost enforcer, or a manifestation of heavenly punishment. But I knew one thing for certain. It did not belong to the world of the living. In that moment, I stood frozen between terror and compassion. Every instinct screamed at me to flee, to pretend I had seen nothing and let fate run its course. But then the fox's eyes met mine. There was no malice in them, only fear, only desperation. Before I could think, my body moved on its own. I stepped forward, placing myself between the fox and the shadow. The moment I did, the darkness recoiled, dissolving into the night like smoke scattered by wind. Silence returned. But the balance between life and death had already been broken. The fox survived, but survival came at a cost. Its vital essence had been severely damaged, its life barely clinging to the thread I had torn from death's grasp. I carried it away and hid it, nursing it with what little knowledge I possessed. I told myself it would recover, that once it did, everything would return to normal. I was wrong. From that night onward, strange phenomena followed me relentlessly. Sleep became a torment. Every time I closed my eyes, I found myself trapped in nightmares. Endless fog, faceless figures standing in silence, watching. Sometimes I woke up in the dead of night, drenched in cold sweat, certain that someone was standing beside my bed. Even awake, the feeling never left. I sensed eyes on me wherever I went. Reflections in mirrors lingered too long. Shadows moved when they should not have. The air around me grew heavier each day, as though something unseen had wrapped itself around my body. Yin energy had attached itself to me. Though I did not yet understand it, this was the clearest sign that I had crossed into non-human karma. In the unseen world, there exists an unspoken law. Those who interfere with ordained death must bear the consequences in its place. Saving someone meant taking on what was meant for them. But at the time, I remained ignorant of how serious the situation truly was. I believed these disturbances would fade once the fox healed. I never imagined that the act of mercy I had shown was the beginning of a debt far heavier than I could repay. One moonless night, the fox vanished. Panic seized me as I searched everywhere, convinced that death had finally claimed what I had stolen. Just as despair threatened to swallow me, a calm feminine voice spoke behind my back. "There is no need to look." I turned around. Standing there was a woman, dressed in white, her presence both gentle and unsettling. Her features were delicate, her expression serene, yet her eyes carried a depth that no ordinary human could possess. She bowed her head slightly. "I am the fox you saved." She revealed her true identity, a fox spirit who had cultivated for many years and stood on the verge of her heavenly tribulation. The force that hunted her was not a random ghost, but the execution of destiny itself. Had I not intervened, her soul would have been erased entirely. She told me she had come for one reason only, to repay her debt. Among the Fox clan, there exists an iron rule. Any debt of life must be repaid. Failure to do so condemns the soul to eternal wandering, unable to ascend or reincarnate. "An unreturned kindness binds the soul," she said softly. "Until it is repaid, I cannot leave." From that moment on, an unnatural bond was forged between us. Not love, not hatred, but karma itself, a thread that bound the fate of a human and a fox spirit together, crossing the boundary between worlds. And only then did I realize the truth. Once you step onto the edge between life and death, there is no turning back. From the moment the white fox revealed herself, my life no longer belonged solely to me. She did not announce her protection with grand gestures, nor did she stay constantly at my side. Instead, she watched from the shadows, intervening only when danger crept too close. At first, I barely noticed the changes. Accidents that should have happened did not. Sudden illnesses faded overnight. Situations that once spiraled into disaster somehow resolved themselves at the last moment. Only later did I realize how many invisible hands had been steering my fate. Once, a heavy beam snapped, loose at a construction site, and came crashing down toward me. Before I could react, a sharp gust of cold wind pushed me aside, leaving the beam shattered inches from where I had stood. Another time, a vehicle ran a red light at full speed. My body froze mid-step, as if restrained by unseen arms, while the car thundered past. Again and again, death brushed past my shoulder. Whenever misfortune approached, strange signs followed. Flickers of white at the corner of my vision, the scent of frost in summer air, sudden silence where sound should exist. Only afterward would she appear, calm as ever, claiming nothing more than coincidence. Yet gratitude did not come alone. Fear accompanied it. I knew she was not human. I knew her presence bent the natural order. At times, I felt dependent on her protection, relying on an unseen force rather than my own choices. That realization unsettled me more than the dangers themselves. Worse still, her involvement grew deeper. She began to interfere, not only with calamities, but with the mundane details of my life, guiding my decisions, steering me away from certain people, altering outcomes I had not yet experienced. Slowly, imperceptibly, my fate stopped unfolding on its own. It began to revolve around her. What started as repayment of a life debt was transforming into something heavier, a karmic entanglement that tightened with every passing day. Balance does not tolerate prolonged disruption. The moment the white fox remained in the human realm beyond her allotted time, the underworld took notice. Ghost enforcers, beings tasked with maintaining the boundary between yin and yang, began to move. The first sign was the sudden drop in temperature wherever I went. Mirrors fogged without reason, candles extinguished themselves, shadows lengthened unnaturally, stretching across walls like grasping hands. Then came the pursuit. One night, the white fox appeared before me, with an urgency I had never seen in her eyes. She warned me that the underworld had discovered her survival, that her soul, marked for collection, had evaded judgment. The hunt had begun. Ghost enforcers prowled the periphery of the living world, slipping through cracks where yin energy pooled. Each time they drew near, the air trembled, pressure mounting like a storm about to break. Their presence destabilized the delicate balance she had been maintaining. Yin and yang began to clash. Strange incidents multiplied. Spirits were drawn toward me. Places I passed through became heavy with lingering resentment. I was no longer a bystander. I had become a focal point of a conflict between realms. That was when I sought help. The Taoist master did not need long to see the truth. The moment he looked at me, his expression darkened. He warned me that I carried the scent of death and the mark of non-human karma. Whatever was attached to me, he said, had already altered my destiny. You are standing between life and death, he told me gravely. If this continues, neither side will claim you. His warning was clear. If the white fox did not leave, the underworld would escalate its efforts. And if they succeeded, the consequences would not be limited to her alone. I was already entangled too deeply. It was then that the white fox finally told me the truth. She confessed that my name had already been written into the ledger of the underworld, not as one destined to die immediately, but as one bound to a stolen fate. By saving her life, I had assumed part of her burden. If she left now, she would not be spared. Her soul, torn from the cycle at the moment of her near death, could not simply return. The instant she re-entered the underworld, her spirit would scatter, erased entirely. No reincarnation, no redemption, and if she stayed, then we would share the karma. Every calamity diverted from me would rebound upon her. Every law broken to keep her in the human world would deepen the debt binding us both. What began as gratitude had long since transformed into a bond that could not be severed without sacrifice. This is no longer repayment, she said quietly. It is destiny entangled. The choice before us was no longer simple. Let her go and condemn her to oblivion, or keep her here and accept a future bound by shared karma, hunted by the underworld, living on borrowed time. Neither path led to peace. I realized then that mercy is never free. Saving a life does not end at the moment of rescue. It echoes, demanding payment, long after gratitude has faded. What I thought was an act of kindness had rewritten both our fates. And standing at that crossroads, I understood one final truth. Once karma binds two souls together, no one walks away unscathed. The day the underworld finally acted, I knew that all delays had reached their limit. The air around me thickened, as if the world itself were being dragged downward. Breath turned white the moment it left my lungs, and the ground beneath my feet felt unnaturally heavy. Shadows no longer hid at the edges of my vision. They stepped forward openly, taking shape with cold authority. The ghost enforcers had come. Their purpose was clear: to reclaim the white fox's soul. She had escaped death once, lingered beyond her destined end, and disrupted the balance of yin and yang for far too long. The underworld would tolerate no further defiance. Invisible chains descended from the void, locking the space around us in place. My body was forced to the ground, crushed by an unseen weight, my heartbeat pounding painfully in my ears. The white fox stood in front of me. For the first time, the calm she always wore cracked. There was no fear in her eyes, only certainty and sorrow. The ghost enforcers pronounced their judgment with emotionless precision. The fox spirit should have perished during her heavenly tribulation. Her continued existence was an abomination. Her soul would be seized immediately. I tried to speak. I tried to beg. No sound came out. That was when she turned back to look at me. "Do not be afraid," she said softly. "This is my choice." She chose to sacrifice everything she had cultivated, her spiritual power, her path toward ascension, her very identity as a fox spirit, in exchange for my life. She knew that if this struggle continued, heaven would crush us both without mercy. But if she willingly dispersed her cultivation and severed her karmic roots, the burden weighing on my fate could be transferred entirely to her. It was a merciless exchange. For a spirit, losing cultivation was worse than death. It meant losing form, memory, and the chance to transcend. Yet she accepted it without hesitation. The clash that followed was brief, but devastating. She did not fight the ghost enforcers with brute force. Instead, she burned her own essence, releasing years of gathered cultivation as pure white light. The darkness recoiled, torn apart by the brilliance, while invisible laws twisted under the strain. I watched as layers of radiance shattered around her, each fragment representing a part of her existence being torn away. Then heaven intervened. There was no thunder, no spectacle, only an overwhelming pressure that forced all things into stillness. The celestial order rendered its verdict. Balance must be restored. One life would be spared, one would pay the price, and it would not be me. When it was over, the white fox was gone. Where she had stood, there remained only a faint glow, slowly dissolving into the air like mist under morning light. Some say she vanished completely. Others claim her spirit was reduced to a formless entity, cast into the cycle of reincarnation to begin again with nothing. I do not know which is true. I only know that I survived. But survival came altered. My body bore subtle marks, pale traces that surfaced under moonlight, as if the fox's presence had branded itself onto my soul. The yin energy surrounding me had weakened, but it never disappeared entirely. Sometimes, in half-forgotten dreams, I still see her standing at a distance, dressed in white, her back turned to me. I call out, but she never answers. Only the wind responds, carrying with it a familiar, aching calm. No farewell was spoken, no promise was made. Yet I know there is an unspoken appointment that remains unfulfilled. If fate allows, we may meet again, not in this life, perhaps not even in human form. She could pass me as a stranger in a crowd, or exist as nothing more than a fleeting sense of recognition. I cannot be certain, but karma does not sever easily. It only waits. This is not a complete ending, only a pause, a quiet breath before the next turning of the wheel. This story was never merely about spirits or ghosts. It is about karma. Saving a life is not only an act of kindness, it is an acceptance of consequence. Karma does not distinguish between human and spirit, mortal and immortal. The moment one interferes with life and death, payment becomes inevitable. The deeper the gratitude, the heavier the debt. The white fox did not repay her debt out of obligation alone, but because the laws of her path demanded it. And I, though unwilling, bore the aftermath of mercy I never intended to cost so much. The story reminds us of a simple truth. Not every good deed comes without a price. Not every act of compassion leads to a perfect ending. Yet despite that knowledge, there are still those who choose to pay the cost, to sacrifice, to endure, to carry karma forward, if it means preserving even a fragment of life. And perhaps that choice, flawed and painful as it is what gives karma its deepest meaning.